I didn't need to be reminded that I'm a huge Beyonce fan. But I love what Beyonce, I feel it consistently does, is prove that she does her research. She does take her time to make the whatever she does that she's going to do to the best of her ability, that she's going to produce it, sing it, dance it, that she's going to have the people behind her, the scenes on the stage at the best of their ability. And I love that about her at a time where it feels like artists are just throwing stuff out without even trying. And so I just but yeah, that's my main piece. I mean, I'm echoing along what everybody else says. I just thought it was beautiful. I just love seeing everything and how she elevates, how she escalates, and how she just surprises us and amazes me every single time she drops something. So I loved it. I watch it constantly while I'm working, so I'm very biased.
Love it, love it.
I would honestly still haven't seen it in its entirety. Just like kind of, can everybody hear me?
You good?
Okay. I haven't seen it in its entirety, just like the little snippets that pop up on social media all the time. And I'm not surprised to hear like a lot of the people say that they're very, like they're pleased with it, they're very content with it, et cetera, et cetera. Because I do feel like Beyonce can really do no wrong. That's not my opinion. I feel like that is just the opinion of like the world. And so I wanted to ask, I had a question because there was also some stuff that I saw on social media where people were kind of saying that, or pointing out the irony in the fact that like she has like produced this body of work that essentially has like, you know, the continent of Africa like at the center stage. But it's like kind of ironic that she is representative of like acceptable Blackness. And so I was just interested in hearing like what were people's thoughts on that. Because who were talking about this, but like getting heavily criticized by, you know, other folks who are kind of just like, oh my God, like, why can't you just like the body of work for what it is and things like that. But I do think that there is something to be said about, you know, like what Black excellence tends to look like on the big screen. And I feel like that's not something that I think it behooves us to like have that conversation as well. So I'm interested to hear like what are people's thoughts about or feelings about that particular argument, if any.
It's kind of like a double-edged sword, because ultimately we typically do have negative depictions and ideas of Africa when we think about it. So it is beneficial to have someone who is pretty much universally like beloved, especially by Black folks like Beyonce, act as like the arbiter of like what specifically West African, but African ideas and images and visuals. So like she can say, I'm going to introduce some of you to. It was funny. I saw an article that said because Burna Boy put out his album recently, and the article started with like the Beyonce endorsed artist Burna Boy puts out a new album, and like obviously that's not the case. People have been listening to Burna Boy for a while, way before Beyonce put him on her album, but that was the introduction to Burna Boy for some people, right? And like that isn't necessarily a bad thing. And her recognizing how popular she is, using her platform to say like, I'm going to introduce you all to African artists. I'm going to introduce you to African, whether it be dances or clothes or whatever. I'm going to like introduce this to you all, and hopefully you take this and like run with it yourself.
Yeah, I just want to, you know, sorry, Ryan, were you about to say something?
Oh, no, going along with what Carla was saying. So there was some kind of like feedback on, for instance, No Name was mentioning how like she released this like body of work in like Disney Plus, right? Which you have to be subscribed to it. So it's not widely available to everyone. So how do people feel about the fact that some people criticize her about being fitting into capitalism because she didn't release it in the mainstream? It wasn't like a public body of work. It wasn't available on YouTube. You had to be subscribed to this specific type of platform, which is Disney Plus, and you have to be able to like watch this piece of work. So some of that criticism that came from that perspective and like how people feel about that. Is it justified? Is it you think reading too much into it? Because this came along from an activist, right? No Name was someone who we know came J. Cole came out here for no reason. So she was kind of like in the front lines of the protest, and now she kind of went back and attacked Beyonce, right? So like, how will people feel about the fact that like she kind of went from somebody attacking her to her being like attacking someone else, especially a Black woman? So that's talking about from like Carla getting back on Carla.
I feel like No Name was reaching on that in the sense that with platforms like Disney Plus, Netflix, and all them stuff, you're always afforded a free trial. And like we know off our own personal experiences, when your free trial runs up, when we didn't have money, what'd you do? You made a new email and you got another free trial. So like, yeah, it may not have been on like YouTube or anything, but I think anybody with like who really wanted to see it would find a way to see it for free. Like it's not really like she was playing into capitalism. It was just like Disney's really mainstream. Like everybody watches Disney. Like it reaches everyone. Like not everybody watches BET, not everybody watches USA, not everybody like watches Nickelodeon or whatever, but Disney is just like a household name. Like I feel like it was just one of those things where it's like it would reach the most masses. I guess, yeah, you could say YouTube would hit the most people, but it's Beyonce. I guess, you know, she got to be on like the creme de la creme of platforms, whatever, and really like put her thing in the homes, like where kids are watching it on a daily basis. So I think it's kind of a reach to just say like she was trying to be a capitalist about it or whatever. She's just really trying to get to what people really are looking at or whatever. And like there's an opportunity, I think, for everybody to get on something like Disney Plus. Like it's not as limited as off face value what they're making it seem it to be.
So my perspective is that, you know, first of all, like multiple things can be true. So, you know, there is a, you know, and I'm not necessarily going to call every move to acquire money as being a capitalist, because I have rent, I have mortgage, and I make decisions sometimes that not as much as I should, but decisions that get me paid. You know, I think ultimately, like, I think, you know, she's an artist and she sells her art. And I think she definitely had a choice of if she wanted to make this available for free or make this available in a way that gets her paid. And I don't think she thought too long about what she was going to do in that regard. I do still think that it is a valuable thing for the culture. And yes, indeed, there are ways people can access it for free. We are an innovative people. I don't think I mean, that thing is accessible. But, you know, I think to the point about like No Name's critique, I think that also all things can be true. It can be a great piece of art that we appreciate and find value from and are inspired by. And it could have problematic elements of it in terms of like who's centered there. I mean, but I also think that artists should be able to be critiqued. Art should be able to be critiqued. No Name got to where she got in terms of like her level of kind of research and her work and her thinking off people critiquing her. She came in the game as No Name Gypsy, and people were like, Gypsy, that's kind of problematic. And so she went and removed that name. People talked about, or she came out and saying something essentially like capitalism isn't all bad. And people were like, yo, you're wildin'. And then she went and did her research and came back as a borderline socialist. So I think that like critique should happen. Beyonce did not come into the game as seemingly conscious as she is now and did some things that people were like, okay, this is kind of Black, but it's kind of not enough in this way or that way. And I think we've seen the progress of that. I also don't put artists up on this particular pedestal and expect them to be super like deeply engaged in this stuff. Ultimately, I think they're going to make art that sells. And I think Beyonce, no matter how amazing she is in so many different ways and how many topics she touches on, that's still her primary MO. So I think that like all these things are kind of true.
I just think that because you touched on a point that if Beyonce wanted it to be free, but I feel like Disney is still a monster and Disney wants their money. So even if she wanted it to be free, I do feel like there's a Disney aspect to it. And when I think of it as a Black American descendant of slaves, so I don't have the family background to say this is how I feel from an African perspective, but I feel like Beyonce took the opportunity that she was in Lion King, which is a movie based on the continent, and tried her best to bring in as many people from that background to get money to eat, to get exposure from this big project that was coming out. And so from that perspective, it's like she leveraged her position within Disney, because Disney would probably been fine having Selena Gomez sing whatever song and keeping it moving. So this idea that she said, no, I'm gonna, not that these names aren't, we know Burna Boy, we know these other people, but I'm gonna bring them into a potential platform or a space that they might not have been easily able to get there yet, kind of putting one on. I feel like that's just my perspective, that she took the time to say, okay, I'm on this movie, I'm going to try to do right. And I read an article too, I forgot, I can't cite it right now, about, I think it was the guy who wrote or sang, was it Can You Feel the Love Tonight? I'm mixing up my Disney movies, but yes.
Elton John?
Was it Elton? No, somebody else. One of them songs, he never got paid for it at all. So she made sure on the gift that he got writing credits, so that way she could try to rewrite her wrong. So I'm not saying she's perfect. I think stuff is problematic, but when I look at the position she's in, I feel like she was trying her best to try to even the playing field, to make sure that the right people are at the right table on a movie as big as The Lion King. But that's just my perspective. When you said that she could have made it free, I don't know if Disney's out here as big of a monster, as big as Beyonce is. I think Disney's still like, nah, I want my money.
They want their coin.
And it wasn't Phil Collins. It was a black man from Africa. I know who Phil Collins is. I forgot the exact guy's name, but I do remember reading that article. I think her mom had spoken about it, and that's what really influenced her to do the gift itself.
Somebody typed in, should I read the comment, or does the person who typed it want to read it?
Is it the really long comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can talk on it. I mean, I am a No Name fan. I'm just gonna name that. And I saw her critique is valid, right? And I think what she was trying to point out or trying to name is like colonial and like imperialistic view of Africa, and the ways in which like that is taken up in the video and taken up in like the vision that Beyonce sets up. No matter how beautiful Africa looks, like we do need to recognize that there is like a particular capitalistic vision that goes into like building the world that she did. And I appreciate No Name for naming that. Like, it's all cute to have Africa be like pretty up in this like particular vision, but we also need to recognize like the other half of that reality, right? And like poverty and like the colonialism and all that, the projects that like have destroyed Africa in so many different places also need to be seen too, or like even just like named and envisioned. And so I appreciated that she was just trying to be like, cool that you're learning about Africa, but this isn't the only Africa that you get to see, and this isn't the only Africa that lives.
I mean, I think I kind of disagree with that, because I feel like generally it's the poverty-stricken areas of Africa that's highlighted when you look at the TV. Like you don't see them show the dynasties of Africa, all the beauties in Africa. It's always like a mud hut or something, or people with flies on their face. Like we never really get those chances where they're showing the beauties of Africa. So it's like, for me, that's why I didn't validate that statement, or it's just like, yo, we never really get that chance where it's just like Africa's shining. It's always like, all right, corruption, 419, hut people, like just mad, like it's always a negative light on Africa. All they're inflating. So like to actually like display that, yo, they got culture, they got, there's mansions in Africa, they have this, that, and the third. Like it's not just coming to America. Like it's pretty dope. It's pretty dope to just have finally like a positive display of Africa. Because like realistically, if we all thought to ourselves, when's the last time you've seen a positive video on Africa other than We Are the World? And that was even on some trying to make Africa better type stuff. And that was even just on Africa.
Well, that was more of the criticism that I was actually touching on, that some people were commenting on social media, is that yes, there is this like completely beautiful narrative about the African continent that we don't get to see that much. And how ironic is it that we are now getting to see it produced by this woman who is a Black American woman, and who is also more so a picture. Like I'm not talking about like who she actually is, but like a picture, an image of acceptable Blackness. Like they were trying to point out the irony in the fact that she is the vehicle through which this message is being presented. And would it have been appreciated in the same way if it was presented by someone who was not like the picture perfect, like acceptable, Black person?
Going back to Aya, like all of these things are true at once, and that's what makes it so complicated. Because ultimately, right, like because like what else do we want Beyonce to do? You know what I mean? Like it kind of comes down to like, what else is this woman supposed to do, right? Like if she were just to continue to focus on like the American South, where like she originates from, it'll be like, okay, Beyonce, you've done this already, right? Like, what else do you do? What else do you have in your like repertoire, your oeuvre, whatever, to share with your audience, with your viewers? And like Africa is a part of her, right? The same way it is with all Black folks, right? So like, again, her being the vehicle for it, it would be great if it was someone from the continent who could get all the nuances that Hamid and Olu were talking about, but like it wasn't. Those visuals do exist, and hopefully like people that watch this are like, oh, maybe I can like look for those things. That's the idea. Obviously, we know that doesn't always happen. A lot of it will begin and end with Black is King, and like that's not the worst thing, right? Yeah.
I think we should probably pivot.
Yeah. Yeah. You can go for it. What are you gonna say?
No, go ahead, Mr. Lambo.
Okay.
Wait, are we switching topics right now?
Yeah. Why do you want to get a couple words in?
I got a real question in regards to video.
So
does anyone know?
Amin is just facilitating the show now. All right.
No. I've been dying.
Amin's running the show, guys. All right.
I can't find nobody else to ask this question. But does anybody know the significance of the blue guy? I've looked all over the internet, can't find it.
Oh, that's he's the genie from Aladdin.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. It was really that simple. I'm kind of mad that it was that simple.
Oh, that was being sarcastic, Hamid. I don't think it was.
Oh yeah, bastard.
Table that one.
I fell for it. I really believed him.
All right, so, quickly switching topics. Obviously,
okay, so I looked up quickly. A few people have theorized. So people say that he's like Rafiki. A few people have theorized he's a spirit guide, similar to Rafiki. He appears just like Beyonce throughout the film. In Afghan culture, this blue protects against evil spirits and can represent a spirit itself. The color is most similar to Haint, which has several layers of meaning. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it has some type of, I don't know who on the internet decided this, but it seemed like it has some type of significance to, I don't even know what AFAM is, AFAM. Does anyone here know what that is? Okay, but I can send the article that I'm reading.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. Yeah.
Let out. Thank you, Brian, for that too. All right, so in the realm of politics, which I'm assuming people are over at this point, Joe Biden spent what's felt like several years trying to find and pick his VP, and he made a choice. He picked Kamala Harris, who was a prosecutor in California, became a senator there, tried to run for president, and then now the VP. And obviously, most people are like pretty bored with the idea of her. She's obviously the first Black woman on a ticket. And it's less about how people feel about it, because I think most people are like bored by it. But this really does shape how the Democratic Party is going to look for the next few years. Joe Biden is likely not going to run again if he wins this election, right? So Kamala is like in shape to run for president in the next in 4 years from now. And I'm wondering, as a very diverse group, the base of the Democratic Party, right? Like, one, how do you all get yourself excited about it? How do you get other people excited about it? I can probably guarantee there are like a few people within your circle who like aren't going to vote or say they're not going to vote because they're not interested. Like, what do you do in this position dealing with with a ticket you're not excited about?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. What I tell people is, number one, like, put the people aside and focus on the issues at hand. You know, instead of wanting to fall in love with Biden or Kamala, just simply ask yourself, all right, I think climate change is important. Who is going to put the resources and efforts behind it? These guys or the guy who's in charge right now? I think healthcare is important. who is going to put us on a path towards universal health care, whether that's Medicare for all or whatever, Biden and Kamala or Trump and Pence. And the second thing is, and maybe it's just the nature of our politics that the president is the center of any and everything, which is like the past 4 years has been pretty fucking exhausting. But there are other political positions than the presidency. I mean, Congress is one, but also you have the governor, the mayor, your city councilman, your state rep, your state senator. And it's arguable that your local politicians are just as important or even more important than the person who's sitting in the White House. So if you're asking yourself, man, why is housing so expensive? All right, well, who's on your zoning commission? Why are my streets messed up? All right, who's on your town council? You know, like, so those things I try to get people towards, because it feels like this presidential election has been going on, quite honestly, since 2018 when the midterms were over. Hell, I'd say even since like 2016 when the last presidential election ended. It felt like this one started up in January of 2017. So right. We never really had a break. So what I tell folks, and then what I would tell you guys on the call here is focus on the issues and also focus on down ballot races. If you want to, if you're looking at Kamala and you're just like, man, she shouldn't be there, I would want somebody more progressive. All right, who's your DA? Because she came up as an attorney and rose through ranks in local politics. Most national leaders, they get their start off in local politics. So look at who is there now, because they're most likely going to be the future leaders in 5 to 10 years. And if you're not happy with them, you know, put your efforts behind somebody else, or hell, you even run.
Tolu, are you going to run? Because I got my mail-in ballot here. I'm ready to put your name down somewhere.
Man, I've been thinking about it.
Yeah.
I don't have the patience. I don't have the patience for it. I'd rather have other folks do it. And then if I find somebody progressive, I'll put my money and effort and time behind them.
Fair enough. Well, I don't like you as a person, but as a politician, great job.
Wait, Tolu said he got money that he'll put behind somebody?
Well, yeah.
No,
I'll run.
You only need a couple hundred to run for local elections. You honestly don't need much money to run for a local election.
So in the comments, it says, paraphrasing of folk voting around, voting isn't a marriage, it's public transportation. You're not waiting for quote unquote the one, you're getting on the bus. And if there wasn't one going exactly to your destination, you don't stay home, you take the one that's going closest to where you want to be. I think that's a really, 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 really good point. Okay, with that being said, hopefully we take what Tolu said. Hopefully we've heard ideas like this before, right? Like voting down the ballot, thinking more locally can make some like quick, make some really significant change in like your community. What do we do about everybody else? What do we do with friends of ours who are like, I'm not interested. This ballot is terrible. I'm picking between the fox and the wolf. I'm just gonna opt out. What do we say to those friends?
Well, you know what? I don't have as much advice on what we would say to get them on the right path and in the right mentality. But I do think it's valuable for those of us who are on the let's settle for Biden, let's just do what we need to do, who understand Kristen's point. But I think to acknowledge kind of where people are coming from in order to be able to navigate that. Especially folks who were conscious, were aware, maybe voted for the first or second time for President Obama. I think there was a general collective feeling. I remember being a senior in high school when Obama was elected, and there was this feeling of like closer to like a marriage. This wasn't a, we weren't settling. We finally got our guy. We finally got Barack and Michelle. We finally got this thing that we felt that we had been, robbed of, taken away from us in this country, something that felt like justice at the federal level. Obviously, the way that presidency unfolded, we grew up and we've come to look at a lot of things differently. But I think that feeling is a valid feeling. And I think that, what our predecessors, our ancestors, what those who fought for civil rights really wanted wasn't necessarily didn't necessarily expect us to not be where they fought for us to be so long ago still. And so I think that frustration and that disappointment is a valid thing. And I think that this hopelessness almost is a thing that we have to acknowledge and not put on people who aren't civically engaged enough. We've watched a country, we've watched administration after administration disappoint, oppress, and not do enough for people. And I think that that's a very fair thing to come from. I do still think the answer is to still vote, but I do think that we have to acknowledge where people who have been formerly incarcerated, people who have been, who have friends who are connected to the mass incarceration system, knowing people like Joe Biden wrote the crime, helped write the crime bill that has many of our brothers and sisters and our friends incarcerated, right? Being a district attorney, like knowing what that job requires you to do. I think it's fair for us to acknowledge that as a people of who we're putting our vote in and who we're entrusting to an extent. And I made this kind of analogy, well, not analogy, but just saying that like, if we're gonna say, hey, Joe Biden, you signed on, you agreed to this policy that you may have had different feelings about, but nonetheless voted yes. Thus, you are responsible and, accountable to what that bill put in. We are also, to some extent accountable for voting for people who ultimately may follow similar policies, right? And so I think that it's important to also acknowledge that, like, it's not as easy as just taking public transport. It's not as easy as just settling. We have to wrestle with the accountability we want to hold these people to, that we may have doubts about how willing they are to actually deliver on the things that we need to ensure that we're safe and protected under the law. And so I think that there's a little bit to also wrestle with that I think needs to be acknowledged when we're having these dialogues with people.
Really well said. Okay. Is everyone here planning on voting? I know everybody's I'm assuming everyone's saying, is everybody got their like ballots in? Everybody knows what they're doing? Everybody got that figured out? Okay. All right. I hope so. Kevin, get out of here. Yeah, it's really difficult. We're in a tricky position. Acknowledging it and then trying to hold these people accountable is what we can do, what we have to do at this point. But yeah, we have to get Donald Trump out of the White House. Like it's mandatory. We have to. There's really no other option. Cool. I appreciate people for like jumping in. Totally, thank you for jumping in and sharing. Aya, thank you for making that point. Do you want to lead us into our last discussion?
Brian, not sure if this would be the best way because it might require some work, but one way to start is one way to start can be to ask which politician the person supports, and if any of those politicians, 1, have publicly supported, 2, are public in support of anyone but Trump, 3, spoke at the convention, written an op-ed. Can be asked which politicians the person supports and any of these politicians. Brian, can you say that, explain that a little better than I read it? Okay, he's not. You're on mute. I don't think he's on mute. I think.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
Where are you taking us?
To the kitchen. My dad's on the phone. So
MTV Cribs.
What I was saying was a lot of people, whether they are in support of anyone else that could have been on the ticket, right? Many of those folks have spoken in the past couple of days or will be speaking either tonight or tomorrow. Or maybe there are folks that who may be conservative but are like F Trump, right? and then maybe the person that they would have supported had actually also said Trump, right? So maybe putting them in that direction where it's like, well, someone you support is actually in support of getting him out, and that's why you should vote. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear that. So politics, you know, tough decisions, choices. These themes, some of our favorite artists have, you know, brought them up throughout their discographies. No one has really covered the breadth of topics to the depth that they possibly. Okay, I'm kidding. So our last topic is Drake, Aubrey Graham. Damn, I forgot his name from Degrassi for a second. Wheelchair. Jimmy. You know, he's come a long way as an artist. You know, I remember listening to Drake. I wasn't a Degrassi. I didn't watch the show, but Comeback Season came out, and I was like, "Who's this kid? This guy seems like he's really got some things to say." And I think throughout his career, he's kind of gone from, you know, yes, Wheelchair Jimmy, this actor turned rapper, this Canadian. I remember there was like a Ghostface Killah. I don't know if Ghostface Killah actually wrote this blog, but there was like a blog post about like, yo, Drake is so soft. He's softer than 2-ply, you know, tissue paper. It was just like this huge rant on just like how soft Drake was. And, you know, his music videos when he first came out, Best I Ever Had, things like that, you know, he also like kind of played on a little bit of his corniness and his, you know, just, he wasn't the man that the boy. He wasn't the boy yet, you know what I mean? He was soft like a baby, you know? And we kind of watched him, you know, be very vulnerable. Songs like Marvin Room, like singing about, you know, his ex and missing them, which was kind of a different thing we were seeing in hip hop. Not that R&B hadn't done it, or some rappers, you know what I mean, who were cool enough to pull that off did it, but he was kind of just like the corny, you know, dude who was singing about his ex and whining and, you know, crooning over, you know, these women that he was in love with, strippers, things like that. So, you know, he really built his platform, his foundation, kind of being to, you know, not the typical version of masculinity as we've observed it traditionally in hip hop in particular. And so to some extent, he kind of challenged that image of the, you know, macho rapper. And over his career, we've kind of seen a shift. I think music has shifted a bit, but I also think society has shifted in a lot of ways and to embrace some of the things that he represented, right? So male vulnerability has been something that, you know, has come up as something that people unpack, acknowledge, and address more and more. And that's a valuable thing to have that vulnerability. Now, while we hold some of these things that Drake has represented or shown in terms of like representing himself as the atypical male or actual typical male, but not the way that men are normally presented, we also do acknowledge that there's a lot of problematic aspects of just who he is as a person and some of the things that he is telling us through his, you know, emotional kind of, you know, explaining. So I don't know why read real cool. Okay, Black Men and Masculinity, an important book to read. Also, damn, what's the bell hooks? All About Love, I think. I have it, but there's a lot out there for men who are also trying to unpack this as well. But just want to also acknowledge that, like, you know, Drake has some problematic, the will to change, exactly. Yeah, so I just want to just like put that context in and just kind of get people's reflection on, you know, Drake's trajectory. What to you is good about the image of masculinity within it? What to you is bad about what Drake represents or Drake's representation of masculinity? Yeah, so just general thoughts about Drake and masculinity. Camille, I think you're off mute, but I can't hear you. Yeah, I don't know what's happening.
I think
So
you gotta tell them.
all right. Thank you. Well, this is me personally. I just feel like his music's been stagnant ever since Views, just very uninspired. But as far as your prompt goes, I think he mainstreamed.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think he mainstreamed a lot of what has been simmering or known as like subgenres within hip hop. So just talking about the emotional side, I know, I know, given this guy's problematic in his own ways, but I know Joe Budden has been very much on the emo side since he started like rapping, since like his first mixtapes, first albums, all of that. And he was looked at as a weirdo, X, Y, and Z. Then here comes Drake, a couple years later, skipping, "You're the best I ever had, please don't leave me." And everybody loves it. But and also just like the softer side of masculinity. Again, you have folks like LL Cool J, the dude who came out with My Radio and Mama Said Knock You Out and all that, singing about how he needs love. And he was ridiculed at that point because why is this diesel-ass dude who dropped all these hard-ass songs like singing about a chick? Like, what's wrong with you, my man? You're supposed to just fuck him and leave him. But he's just like, no, I like this girl. I need her, But as far as like Drake, the persona is concerned, I appreciate the fact that he mainstreamed a lot of this, and he's like just shown how how rappers can have multitudes. You don't have to be a super gangster who's shooting everybody every other second of the day and sold more drugs than Pablo Escobar. Like, you can't just be a dude, just kind of croning about whatever woman or your insecurities in life. And from that perspective, he just makes himself more relatable. And just to end, like, he definitely shifted the game, regardless of what I think of his current music or not. When it's all said and done, he's definitely going to have some sort of plaque to his name. Now, that plaque may have an asterisk, given things that occurred in like 2017 and 2018. I forget when his whole tiff with Pusha was, but it's just to say that he's definitely at least expanded on what is acceptable, at least mainstream wise, what's acceptable for men to talk about, which I think is a good thing.
Word. Camille, is your audio back on? No? Well, you're on mute right now. Nah.
Well, I do think, just going off of that, I do think that he began his career like being more emotionally open. But as time has gone by, I think since the feud with Meek Mills, he has transitioned more into kind of like trying to be like a tougher image and like kind of more like into like rap, like underground and like hardcore rap. I feel like even like the latest videos that's dropped, even like in more misogynistic as well, like the one with Chris Brown and No Guidance, like those type of videos have become more about like exposing, like having like women like being exposed. And I feel like as he has been like coming along more, I mean, he's crying in a new video, yeah, but then he's also has another girl in a bikini the whole time too. Well, not the whole time, but she's there as well. But I just feel like he's trying to like be a tougher guy, be like sports. In that whole video was about him being like tough and like being athletic and stuff like that. He got tackled, whatever. He's like, he shows his like comedy side of it, but he's just trying to put a persona on of like being more like a tougher guy and like kind of shifting his masculinity more into being like a tougher person. And I feel like in the last couple of years, that has been more towards where he goes towards as opposed to his emotions, like in the past, in my opinion, at least. I don't know if it's that part of becoming like more mainstream. It does feel like he's becoming more mainstream, kind of like want to hit like those like be like top of the billboard and like be more popular, like a pop star, like he said. So like kind of like that's one way of him like kind of like shifting into that persona.
Just to uplift Camille's comment, she did say that he's encouraged masculinity to be more multidimensional. I mean, one could also argue that having the, the very typical kind of girls there, but also like crying in the video could be his way of like, showing the multiple sides of masculinity, which can be, the guy who's trying to pursue the girl, as well as the guy who's crying on the football field or whatever. But yeah, here for other people's thoughts.
Issa Rae in season 1 of Insecure, as Issa D, when she was in the car with Daniel, said something about how like bitches love Drake, and how in college, like, she used to listen to Drake so much. And sometimes I wonder, if Drake is a rapper who kind of realized that there was this there was this group that he, maybe could kind of tap into, and he has like, just once he realized that, like, I can kind of hook women, that's something that he decided to expound on, in doing so through, like, showing a little bit more of like the vulnerability, and less of the like toxic, hardcore, misogynistic. And I'm not saying he's not misogynistic, but kind of like having songs that also appeal to like the emotional side of women. Like, I'm wondering if that's something that he realized that he kind of began to do, and if he like kind of took that and ran with it. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Heard that. Wanna call to Kevin also to maybe speak to the point he was making, if you want to, brother?
Yeah, for sure. I actually appreciated what I think their name was Carla. What Carla was saying around like, I think what Carla was saying was kind of reminding me of like the conversations around like nuance and how we hold multiple things to be true. So we're talking about like Drake pushing new boundaries for how masculinity can exist. And I do think that's important to talk about, right? Like, I'm not here trying to create a bash fest, but I do also wonder, right? Like, while he has been able to leverage like this new visions or new ways of existing as a man, how do we hold that in conversation with the fact that he's been accused of sexual violence in the past, right? Like, I think for me, and I'm not saying any of us are perfect or that any man is absolved from being able to engage in sexual violence, be it Drake or the regular dude next door. But I think for me, I think we kind of have to trouble a little bit that like Drake has pushed new ways of being in terms of masculinity, because I think what the underlying message for me is in all this is like, you can show off vulnerability, capitalize on it, but you can still also take advantage of women in ways that are like not okay, and in ways that we know are actually really dangerous. And so I don't know. I mean, I think I kind of want to give Drake his props, because I think maybe more people are thinking through like, wow, you don't have to be a raging misogynist in music to like, for people to like it, especially other men. And I think it does provoke conversations, but I think what it ends up obscuring on accident or maybe intentionally is that like, you can openly show your vulnerability, but still the question is to whose expense. And usually, I mean, in a situation with Drake being accused of sexual violence, like, it's at the expense of women that he's been involved with. So I do think it's cool, but I think we can't forget that other layer. And I think that complicates the conversation, because then we have to think about bigger systems like, or bigger structures like patriarchy that say that we own women, or we're entitled to women or whatever. So while, yeah, there are new ways of existing within masculinity, it doesn't absolve the fact that we can use that as a leverage to then take advantage of people. And I think that's something that we need to talk through. So I don't know. I mean, I'm still thinking through it. And like, I'm not saying that because I think I'm perfect. I know that I've engaged in harm, but I think that's the other layer that it's really easy to miss, because we're maybe just focusing on the fact that Drake has pushed new ways for us to talk about our feelings, which is still good. I think we can hold multiple things to be true. Yeah.
Well said, Kevin. Well said.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's in that, to kind of piggybacking off of that, the idea that he has still collaborated and done work with, people that have done violence to women as well, right? whether it's Chris Brown, whether it's Future, a host of other artists who he has like supported, used to leverage his career, help them prop up their careers. So like, again, as much as he's made us rethink masculinity, he's also, again, perpetuated, pushed it as well. And yeah, he has like kind of weaponized vulnerability in a way, right? Where you can be like, we can be vulnerable with women, but in a way that like, that kind of leeches on their like, on women, on some women and their like desire to like help men in some cases, unfortunately, right? Like, it's like, okay, I see that you're weak and vulnerable in this state. I'm going to try and like lift you up, and men taking advantage of that. So again, like similar, like, cause like Tupac did this in like a very extreme way too. Like he had multitudes as well, and they were like on like, whereas Drake is a little more gradual. His were at the very end of one spectrum, but like Dear Mama, and then at the very other end where he was accused of sexual assault as well, right? So like thinking about him and like where he existed too is like it's similar.
Right, and I think that both of their narratives and generally like ultimately it kind of relates to kind of some of the conversations we have about racism and, you know, people, you know, pushing back against the traditional kind of like, you know, roles maybe as non-POC. It's not enough to just, you know, kind of not be like other white people, right? Like you have to actively work to dismantle the system that allows white supremacy to exist. Similarly, you can't just be a different kind of dude. You can't just do things differently from most men in order to actually, you know, dismantle the patriarchy and to not benefit from it and to not perpetuate it and to not act on, you know, things that you're patriarchally inclined to do, right? Or not inclined, but that the system is set up to allow you to get away with, right? So I think that ultimately we look at these people as people who may have been not as, you know, masculine as other men, but like not that didn't actually go and attack the system of patriarchy. I think that's still something I would say across the board when it comes to male Black men in music. I don't have any examples that come to mind of like people who are actively pushing against that narrative. And so I think that there's still a long way to go who are actually working against that system or actually trying to use their platform and their music to actually push to actually dismantle patriarchy. So I agree with all the things about like, yes, we can talk about how Drake has been better than some, but still a far cry from someone who's actually working against the patriarchy.
Yes, dismantle patriarchy and support WAP. Okay, WAP, 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 WAP.
So we can either spend the last couple of minutes talking about the WAP, or we can.
You're gonna tell us about that?
I wasn't. No, Blavity published an article on this Black chemist girl. I forget her name, but she published a whole article on the science of WAP. Okay, it's real.
Break it down. You know, I have my only firsthand experiences to go from, so I can't really speak on it as much as the others can.
Okay, but high key, I really do think that we could talk about WAP, like obviously for its very like, you know, real life implications, but I think there's a lot of shit that we could talk through and analyze in the WAP video. We can talk about straight black men's reactions to the WAP video. We can talk about people's entitlements for how women express their sexuality and like all this shit in WAP, but also, I mean, we shout outs to Kabir because he's in the reading group that I'm facilitating. But we talked about how in the WAP video in particular, right? People like there are black men straight black men in particular, who might say like, yeah, women's liberation and sexuality is so important, especially black women, da 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 da. And I've also been a culprit of this behavior, so I don't speak from no experience. But on the flip side, right, when we think about how we idolize celebrity and like Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, both very desirable people that most folks find attractive. But the difference is that people are okay with Cardi and Megan mostly expressing their sexuality in the way they do in WAP is because they're the lack of proximity. If you ask most black men if they would accept their partner, their romantic partner, right, in a heterosexual relationship, if the same energy would be there for their partner to express their sexuality on Instagram or on OnlyFans or whatever, it's a totally different conversation, right? It's like, oh, nah, like my girl can't do that, or, oh no, that's hella weird. You know, that's a lot. I don't want my sister doing that. I don't want my cousin, da-da-da. So I think that's another interesting aspect of how patriarchy like creeps in, but I think we don't often talk about. Man, listen, WAP, yeah, the WAP video, we can talk about that for forever, I think. But
yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, go ahead, whoever was gonna go.
let me mute myself.
Car, is that you? Sorry. No? Okay.
Carla's putting in some of the articles. And is that a
My bad, y'all. The first link is a Nearpod link. Don't click it. Click the one that says blavity.com/black scientist. Okay.
All the teachers in the room know the Nearpod link. They know something.
Right.
Yeah,
But since we have men on the call, like, can y'all just answer that question? Like, why is it that, like, and there definitely were people who were, like, very, like, opposed to, you know, like, Cardi and Megan being so outspoken about their vagina. However, it's fine for like men to get on tracks and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna choke this broad and I'm gonna talk about drugs and let me put the head in and all this other stuff. But they talk about, you know, like their comfort with their sexuality and what it is that they want. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're nasty. They don't have nothing else to rap about. This is stripper rap, whatever. So, and then someone said, whatchamacallit, guys wouldn't want their women to kind of be that, I guess, that vocal or whatever about their sexuality. So, like, to the men who are in this forum right now, I'm just interested in knowing, like, why is that? Can y'all answer that question? Because I'm curious.
I can attempt to respond, you know, from, yeah, a perspective that I have as a male. Well, one, I definitely think there's this, you know, inclination on men, Black men in particular, when it comes to women of color, when it comes to Black women, to police behavior, right? To just police whatever it is that Black women are expressing, to feel connected to that, to feel like that's something that we're obligated to do or say something about. And that in general, just seeing women do things and feeling the need to go to a platform and to speak on it, that in and of itself is one of the issues with Black men. But I do think that also there's insecurity, significant insecurity that is also at play, where Black women expressing themselves and, you know, being able to talk about themselves in a way, there's a bit of like, I mean, I think it's internalized, obviously, but like there's an envy for not being able to express sexuality that isn't in this very specific way that men are told that we can talk about, you know, ourselves, right? There's just not a freedom to even go out there, even when men talk about sex, right? It's not, yo, I'm packing this and I'm doing good and I'm feeling like my shit is just on point. It's like, I got this chick to do this to me, suck it or not. Right? Like the anthems from men are really still not even centered on their own appreciation for what they have. So I think that there's like an internal issue with how men express and feel about their own sexuality, as well as this like policing aspect of things.
And then, and again, to your point, even the way men talk about sex is not like we do have the freedom to talk about sex, but yeah, it is super restrictive, right? Because again, reading We Were Cool has been really helpful, but the idea is that like men are ultimately very limited because we're policing each other, right? So if we do approach each other saying like, oh, it wasn't a matter of me just like fucking this girl or messing with this girl, like I really like her, I care about her, like there's opportunity for you to be clowned for that in some cases, right? And I'm fortunate that I have friends that aren't going to do that, right? But there are some spaces where men are together talking about women and they can't be vulnerable about it, right? So they only can talk about them in ways of like literally using their bodies as like whatever, right? It's unfortunate. And again, in our idea of like how we and this is something that Drake doesn't do, but right, he doesn't talk about women as if they're like equal partners in his relationships, right? He's like, I made you who you are now. Like I cultured you in a way, I gave you access to all these things, and now like I'm gonna let you free, or now I want you back because I'm lonely or sad, right? It's not a matter of the women having agency in that case. And that's ultimately the men's problem. They don't want women having the agency.
Yeah.
Retweet.
This woman on social media told me that I wasn't raised properly because I commented on a post about this whole conversation. And I was essentially saying that, you know, if they choose, like if they want to talk about their sexuality and be loud and be proud about it, which is something that for such a very long time we've been told that we should not do, and that we're actually less valuable as women if we do. Like I welcome that. I champion that, because even I, as a woman, have not always in my 32 years been like comfortable talking about certain things when it comes to my sexuality. Like that's a very new thing. And so when I was saying that I welcome, you know, like women being comfortable enough to speak about it in this way, this woman told me that I wasn't raised right, and that I wasn't going to get a husband, and that my parents or whatever must be like questionable people, because there's no way that a woman should be talking like this.
Yeah, some people shouldn't be allowed on Twitter.
And there's also, and I guess women can speak to this more, but I think there's also the idea in like restricting how women speak about sex, like they're not able to like swap stories in a way that like, this is a thing that I liked, this is a thing that I didn't, this experience was pleasurable, this experience wasn't. So like, they're not even getting ideas of like, this is what pleasure means to me, as opposed to like, I'm just here to please the man. So like, even limiting those conversations keep women from like finding desire and pleasure, what they prefer in like a heterosexual relationship as well.
Yeah. And, you know, to that point, just like, I do think that it's incredibly important to have these perspectives. I mean, you know, to just be hearing from women. Carla, to your point, like, you know, being able to not fit in these boxes that society has said is the way that a good woman is supposed to be. I think that's overall good for society. I think that's great for women. I think men need to hear and understand women and their sexuality in order to be, you know, responsive to it, to understand it. I think that like that's necessary. So I think it's a huge net positive. Love the song. Think it's very important. Love the video. So I do think we're gonna wrap up, which is sad, given that is the season finale, and we don't know when we will be seeing you all's faces. Would have loved to kind of go around and stuff like that, but I know that those kind of things take some time. I'll personally maybe hang out for 15 more minutes or so, but just wanted to say, you know, and my co-hosts can also like say their pieces, but you know, when this show started, you know, it was, you know, we're still probably in the mid pandemic. There was a lot of uncertainty. I personally was struggling with a lot, being alone, being in my house, just feeling like there was no connection with the outside world, definitely some depression. And this definitely was one of the things that brought light to the darkness and helped me like just reconnect with others and reconnect with myself in an important way, find my voice in an important way. So I just want to thank you all for being a part of that community, be a part of that healing and that helping. Hopefully we helped each other and hopefully we healed together, but I just want to let you all know that y'all have been helping and me heal and just helping me out in major ways. And I'm deeply grateful and look forward to, you know, staying engaged with you all.
Yeah, same thing, right? It's been an absolute pleasure getting to like talk with y'all. I definitely, there's some days where I'll come into the meeting and it's like, dang, like I would much rather just like be laying in bed right now. But then like getting into the conversation, engaging with y'all, it's like pushing me, challenging me to think deeper about topics and think differently about topics, and incredibly appreciative. And it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to serve with Aya. I do try to be trying to cancel every week. I'm like, we gotta do it this week. But I really appreciative of you for bringing me on and like you know, helping me work on my facilitation skills and all that stuff. I'm really thankful for you. Yeah, Carla, did you want to say anything?
I just want to thank the fans, you know. I'm joking. I just echo a lot of the stuff that you guys said. Like, this has been a really dope space for us to, you know, have, you know, pretty meaningful dialogue about just stuff in our community that we should openly be talking about. And I definitely can relate to the isolation that some people were feeling during quarantine and in some ways are still feeling. I'm flattered that, you know, you guys felt it fit to have my like quirky, mischievous behind up here facilitating anything, because I definitely get told way too much that I am too loud, I talk too much, I'm too opinionated, whatever. So I appreciate y'all just, you know, in spite of all those things, feeling like, you know, she still has valuable stuff to say, and we want to like amplify her voice in that respect. So thank you.
Thank you. And any other folk, feel free to chime in. If you have to leave, feel free to, you know, bounce. We appreciate you. Again, I'll be here till 9:30. But we don't have to keep going around with that information. But if people have them, you can offer them. You can just
put social media, put your Instagram and Twitters and stuff in the chat, and folks can follow each other. That's how we build community, right? Like that's what everybody says. We need to do more of that. We shouldn't just be like this space that we see and hear from each other. Yeah. If people want to just like shower us with more praise, that's also an option. If you want to do that, we appreciate it.
Podcast. Yeah, the podcast idea is a good one, but the podcast is just so like official. Like you have a podcast, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, damn, you're committing for like, you know, weekly or bi-weekly, like, you know, years. You got to come up with a logo. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just so serious, which I'm not opposed to per se. I got to at least finish the school thing or decide I don't give a shit about the school thing before I like know I can commit to like definitely doing a podcast. But yeah, I mean, also, you know, I'm not sure what content to like keep with. It could remain on this, but you know, podcast is usually a little, I guess it's about an hour, something like that. Just figuring out what type of content. I don't really find myself an expert in any particular field, so sometimes I question like, go on a podcast, what am I gonna contribute that there aren't other brilliant podcasts out there already contributing to? Those are some things that, you know, I definitely think about.
Yeah. We were gonna maybe talk about the show I May Destroy You. I know you've been watching it. Me and Jen, who's in here, we've been talking about it a bunch. If people haven't watched it, please do. It's incredible. It's like one of the best shows I think I've seen in a really long time. It dives into sexual assault in a really, really nuanced way that a lot of shows don't. So even if you think about, what's that Omar Epps movie that came out with Nia Long recently?
Fatal something. The obsession.
There, people are saying.
Something.
What are you saying? Carlo, what are you saying? I want to know what movie that is. What movie are you talking about?
So fatal something.
Fatal Affair. Yes, Fatal Affair. So you think about a movie like Fatal Affair, which is like completely over the top and ridiculous. And Omar Epps is just doing the absolute most. And also still looking the same way he did in like Love and Basketball, which is a whole other thing. But he still looks great. I think he looks great. He got a little chunkier, but he still looks good, guys.
I didn't say he ain't look good. I said he don't look the same.
He got a little heft to him.
But yes, that is still a fine ass chocolate brother.
Wait, Love and Basketball so Aya, we're just gonna kick you out of this. Can I mute? Can I kick you out?
Honestly, it's trash.
That's disrespectful.
When it comes to Black love movies, like, you know, I'm a Poetic Justice.
You even calling it Black love movies there's the first problem that we have.
Love Jones.
Black love movies.
Black romance movies, whatever. Black, it doesn't belong in the canon, okay?
No, it's
First of all, imagine telling your girl, yo, play you for our love. What kind of concept is that?
It's beautiful and it's poetic and it's brilliant. You don't know anything.
Kabir would find that romantic.
Dunking
on your girlfriend is romantic.
The issue that I has is that we played for my love, me and him, and then he lost, so that's his problem.
On purpose.
And yeah,
I threw the game.
No, but I May Destroy You. Please watch it if you haven't. Incredible show. Yeah, really, 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 really good.
Heavy content can be triggering, but I think it's done in a way that is, I mean, obviously people are triggered by different things in different ways, but I do think there's a lot of intentionality. So it's not like, you know, what people call trauma porn or anything like that. Like it's really, I think, intentional and sensitive about how it goes through certain scenes and things like that. So highly, highly, highly recommend for sure. an African creative, yes.
Yes.
Michaela Cole, is it pronounced Cole or Coel?
Cole.
Cole, she's incredible. She was on Chewing Gum as well. Another great show. She's doing phenomenal things. Any other content? I did start watching Hamilton, which I had like a lot of different feelings about if I should or not. And overall, I thought it was good, but it's just great to see Black people doing things. Like I had this one experience where I was able to go to Broadway and watch Chicago, like this program when I was in school, like paid for us to do that. And I was like, yo, it's wild how many people who come from backgrounds like I come from don't get to see this. And to just imagine this cast of as many Black people on a stage like that, performing like around the country, world, whatever, is a phenomenal thing to occur still. So I got into that a little bit.
Yeah, Lovecraft. I still haven't seen it yet. I'm going to watch it hopefully in the next couple of days, but I've heard really good things. Yeah, really excited about that. And the lead actor, that gentleman, he was also in the new Spike Lee movie. He's just really good. Really interested to see what he does.
Fred Hampton movie coming up, right?
Yeah.
Big deal.
That looks incredible.
That was phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Is he British? Is the lead actor British?
It feels like they all
I literally
are.
said the same thing in my head, the exact same way.
I don't know. All the best actors, all like the best actors are. That's typically how it goes.
Well, acting is like a praised discipline in the UK. Like that's like a thing that is just like a very appreciated art form there. So I do think that there's just generally more people who take that path and take it very seriously. Maybe comparatively. But I don't know. There's a lot going in that. All right. Well, people don't have other recommendations. I guess we can wrap up. Say goodbye. I know it's hard to say goodbye, but
it's been a pleasure, y'all.
Pleasure and an honor. Legend of Korra. That's anime, right, or something of that ilk?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
It's been an honor and a privilege.
Yes, definitely. Death Slayer, also a phenomenal anime. I think the best, in my opinion. But what do I know? But all right. We out.
All right, y'all.
All right, y'all.